The hallmark of tyranny is the total distortion of justice. Differences of opinion become felonies for which you can be imprisoned, while actual crimes are described as just business as usual, the way that we do things. And so even as we're trying to throw people in prison for criticizing the Democratic Party, we are allowing people who've hurt this country profoundly to ascend up the ladder of success. There are a million examples of this, but we pick one tonight. Victoria Nuland, who's one of the leaders of the State Department, the architect, by the way, of our current war with Russia, was also the architect of the war in Iraq. Now, that war began under false pretenses. More than 1 million people died for no reason, and it destroyed ancient Christian communities in Iraq. Before the war, there were about 1.5 million Christians in that country. Now just a few 100,000 are left. But Nuland was never held to account for any of this. In fact, she was praised, and then she was promoted. So she went back into government service, and she was caught on tape orchestrating a coup in Ukraine. We're not making this up. Here's the tape from 2014.
Yats is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week, you know. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay.
So that's the lady who lectures us about democracy, subverting democracy in a foreign country, getting caught, and then getting an even better job, and then pushing another pointless war in our country, this one against Russia. She's one of the architects of this war. Nuland is driving this nation into a conflict against both Russia and China. We can't win that war. We will lose that war. It will destroy our country. But Victoria Nuland has never been punished for any of this. Once again, she's been promoted. The destruction that she has wrought is really almost beyond fiction. Here she is bragging about blowing up critical infrastructure in Europe. Watch.
Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
That's just disgusting. And yet no one says a word about it. What does it take to get indicted in Washington? Well, if you're Victoria Nuland, of course, you know you will never be indicted for anything. You'll get some sort of glass ceiling breaking award for women at the State Department. In Washington, you only risk indictment and punishment if you dare to criticize people like Victoria Nuland. And that's the real lesson of what's happening to Donald Trump and his supporters. Their real sin was opposing the people in charge, and particularly in opposing their foreign policy. So using the legal system to stop a political rival in a presidential race is the gravest possible attack on our country's core institutions, the ones that matter. It's election interference. It's an actual threat to democracy. You'd think someone would care. But Nancy Pelosi is celebrating it. Last night she wrote this, the most revealing quote ever on social media. Here it is. No one is above the law, and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. To prove innocence? No. In a free country, this country, the government has to prove guilt. You are innocent until you are proven guilty. But Nancy Pelosi inverts it. Prove your innocence, criminal. And she believes that. They all believe that. You are guilty the moment they come after you, just as in the Soviet Union. And good luck proving your innocence. So you have to ask, where are the adults? Has anyone in authority on the Democratic side, on the neoliberal side, stood up, not for Donald Trump, not for Douglas Mackey, but for our country? We watched carefully today. We didn't hear a single one. Glenn Greenwald has long reported on the political abuses of the legal system. He is the host of System Update on Rumble, and our friend, he joins us tonight. Glenn, you would think somebody would say, look, I don't like Trump, but this is doing grave damage to institutions we're going to need 2 years from now and for the next 100 years. But not one person that we can find has said that.
I heard you in your prior segment saying, where's people like Karl Rove and George Bush and the people who lecture us? I think people like Victoria Nuland demonstrate the theater behind this whole Republican versus Democratic war.
Yes.
This is the key to the whole thing, which is that they are determined not to criminalize conservatism or the Republican Party. They're fine with people like Jeb Bush or John McCain or Mitt Romney or Nikki Haley or Lindsey Graham or whoever. They're determined to criminalize Donald Trump and his movement because the only time Victoria Nuland wasn't in government, she worked for Clinton, then she worked for Dick Cheney, then she worked for Obama, now she worked for Biden, was when Donald Trump was elected president. So that's the only way you get these people out of government, and that's why they're single-mindedly determined to criminalize not the Republican Party, but Donald Trump and his movement, and that's what we saw yesterday with his indictment and today with this person who's now going to prison because of anti-Hillary Clinton memes he posted on Twitter.
The problem is, in organizing the system that way, they cut out the majority of the population. Are the majority of American voters of either party in favor, for example, of going to war with nuclear-armed Russia and China? I don't think there's any evidence the majority is in favor of that. Do you?
No, or for example, keeping troops in Syria, which I would bet you
Right.
barely anybody even knows that the United States is doing, let alone wants to. And yet Matt Gaetz had a resolution to withdraw all troops from Syria, saying we shouldn't be spending money on that. We should be spending money here at home. And the Republicans and Democrats joined together, the establishment wings, to say, no, we want to let Joe Biden keep troops in Syria. It's the establishment wings of both parties that are the real enemy, and they're the ones who rule no matter what you go and do at the voting booth. Donald Trump was the only one who could disrupt it, and that's why they want to criminalize that movement.
That's exactly right. I mean, if you were just to write out the crimes of Donald Trump being obnoxious, okay, versus the crimes of Victoria Nuland destroying the West, you know, one list would be longer than the other. But who's getting indicted? Glenn Greenwald, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks,
very
Tucker.
much.